Hello, in this video we will discuss about the anatomy and physiology of the stomach. So let's begin to understand with the simple diagram for understanding the anatomy of the stomach. So this is inside is the lumen, which that is when open into the stomach through esophagus via a cardiac sphincter. When cardiac sphincter will open, the food will move into the stomach, while the pyloric sphincter when pyloric sphincter will allow to open and food will move into the duodenum. So this is the cardia present this type, and this is the cardiac sphincter, and this is the greater curvature. It is known as the corpus body, while the smaller curvature is the antrum, and the oxytocin gland is also present. This is here, and oxytocin gland is the mucosa. In the basically oxytocin gland mucosa are present. So on the other hand, let's begin to understand the simple diagram of the stomach again for understanding without cross section. So this is the cardiac sphincter is the upper part, and this is the fundus region, and this is the lower down is looking like this. This is the cardiac sphincter. This cardiac sphincter is used for the opening when open, so the food will move into the stomach. While the fundus region is here, which that is upper and body of the stomach, and the greater curvature is here, and the minor curvature is this, and the pyloric antrum is here, and sulcus intermedius, as well as this is the duodenum and pylorus. So let's begin to understand the cross section of the stomach wall. This is the cross section of the stomach wall is looking like this. I'm drawing the structure for understanding better. So the gland are present in the upper part, and this is the folding of the epithelial cell, the surface epithelial cell, which that is folding, and inside is the glandular structure, the glands, which responsible for the secretion, endocrine secretion or exocrine secretion. So there are a lot of cells. We will discuss later in this video for understanding and more detail about the cell type. So this is the blood vessel is used for the absorption of the secretion, the hormone. But remember that this secretion, but the digestive content will not move into the digestive into the blood circulatory system. So this is the structure which that also contain muscle, because the stomach is involved for the contraction and relaxation back and forth for complete mixing of food as well as digestion of food. So this is the mucosa. This is the mucosa layer, which contain a epithelial folding to increase the surface area and is known as gastric pit. While this is the submucosal layer, which contain here is the mucosal layer is contain lamina propria, and this is the submucosal layer contain a muscle layers. These muscle layers contain different type of muscle layer. For example, the muscularis mucosa, it is known as, and the oblique muscle is first and inside to oblique muscle, and outermost is the circular muscle, and outermostly the longitudinal muscle are present, but inside the serosa are present outside. Basically it is the outer layer, outermost layer is known as the serosa. So in this way, here you can see this is the gastric pit contain, basically gastric gland here is, we can understand with a single. Anyhow, here is the gastric gland in corpus, and this is the gastric pit are present. So this gastric pit is basically is contain a isthmus, and this is contain a different type of cell. For example, chief cell, as well as on the other hand the parietal cell. Parietal cell are used for the hydrochloric acid production, while the pepsin is used for the production of the chief cell is used for the production of the pepsin. So on the other hand, this is the type and this is the gastric pit when secrete exocrinally or endocrinally through enteroendocrine cell. For secrete the hormone into the blood circulatory system for the regulation and hunger and the appetite suppression response in our brain. While here the isthmus are present and neck and base. So anyhow, let's begin to understand again the corpus and antrum. So first of all, we should need to understand the containing here is the region which that we will focus on the corpus region, and this contains cell type. So this is a lot of cell type. First, remember. So this gastric mucosa is contain this different type of cells, which that is folding to create the pit is known as gastric pit, and this is responsible for the secretion. Secretion of for what? Secretion for the digestion of food. For example, fat and protein, as well as carbohydrate part. Carbohydrate will not digest, but it will be mixed, and saliva will produce continuously for mixing and hydrolyzing. So this is the mucous neck cell, parietal cell, and the enterochromaffin-like cell. On the other hand, the chief cell and D cell and epsilon cell and G cell. This different type of cell is responsible for the production, secretion, and substance secretion, stimulus for release, and function of secretion. Let's begin to understand one by one for the cell type, substance secreted, and stimulus for release and function of secretion. So in this way, this is the mucus production responsible the cell type mucous neck cell produce mucus as well as bicarbonate, hydrogen bicarbonate. So in this way, the tonic secretion with irritation of mucosa, when irritate the mucosa, will produce the bicarbonate mucus, but the secretion with mucus through bicarbonate, hydrogen bicarbonate. And basically the function of secretion is, first is the mucus is a physical barrier lumen and epithelium, between the lumen and epithelium. So but the buffer and basically the secretion with mucus, the bicarbonate is buffer the gastric acid to prevent the damage to epithelium, and in this way the lumen will separate, mucus will be separate the lumen as well as epithelium for damage prevention. Here is the parietal cell is responsible for the production of hydrochloric acid, and it is released due to the acetylcholine. A vagal nerve will release this acetylcholine and gastrin and histamine. Gastrin can be non-neural stimulation, and histamine also, and basically it is responsible and co-activate the pepsin kill bacteria, and co-activate and pepsin activation and kill the bacteria due to hydrochloric acid. On the other hand, the intrinsic factor also released from the parietal cell. It complexes with vitamin B12 to absorb when bound with intrinsic factor. So histamine is produced from the enterochromaffin-like cell, and acetylcholine and gastrin is responsible for the secretion and stimulate the gastric acid secretion. Anyhow, here is the chief cell. This chief cell is basically this is not the pepsin produced from the chief cell when open, and acetylcholine is the responsible for the secretion due to the neural stimulation, vagal nerves, and digestion of protein, digest fat due to the gastric lipase enzyme also produced. And somatostatin will also produce from D cell, and epsilon cell produce ghrelin. So the somatostatin is used for the acid in the stomach and inhibit the gastric acid secretion, while the ghrelin is used for the increased hunger and stimulation. But the G cell is responsible for substance secreted, the gastrin, and stimulate through acetylcholine peptides and amino acid, and this stimulate the gastric acid secretion. So the gastric acid secretion through a vagal nerves, and this secretion, the gastrin will secrete, and this gastrin basically use function is that stimulate the gastric acid secretion more for digestion of more food. So this again the positive feedback, positive feedback mechanism. Well, let's begin to understand there is the wall of the stomach. So function we will discuss, and how to interact the enteroendocrine cell. So this is the nutrients when contact with the cell of the enteroendocrine cell or intestinal stomach enteroendocrine cell to produce the glucagon-like peptide 1. And this glucagon-like peptide 1 will target to the pancreas when enter into the blood circulatory system. When enter into the blood circulatory system, the target to the pancreas, and after this pancreas targeting to the pancreas bind, after binding with the pancreas, we'll say that insulin used for the hyperglycemia to hypoglycemia after the assimilation of the food. So the insulin will release. After the releasing of the insulin will enter into the blood circulatory system and target to the different tissue for absorption of the protein, absorption of the glucose and fat. So this all thing here is the spinal cord, and vagal nerve will sense this glucagon-like peptide 1. After this sensation, that is lead to into the dorsal root of ganglion of the peripheral nervous system to the central nervous system. And vagal nerve is give the signal to the brain hypothalamus, thalamus to the cerebral cortex to feel the fulfillment of the food, so will not hungry too much. But here he is also produce a ghrelin from the pancreas, from the stomach wall. It is also the an endocrine hormone will target to the cardiovasculature, brain, pancreas, liver and muscles. When the cardiovasculature basically increase of cardiac output, blood pressure decrease, cardio protection will be increased, while the regulation of appetite, adiposity and growth hormone release and energy homeostasis will be occur. While the pancreas, the function of the pancreas through ghrelin, pancreas modulate of insulin secretion and lead to low blood glucose level to hunger. So this ghrelin to the pancreas, so that is why when the low level of glucose we will feel the hungry, and we will give the positive feedback, and in this way we should eat the food. So after eating the food we will relax, but the liver stimulate the gluconeogenesis from liver and fatty acid synthesis during fasting. So thanks for watching. Please make